do it.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things. I wouldn't make it adversarial. We have a tendency in our society to determine that you've got to tear something down in order to build something up. That is a premise around which we do a lot of what we do. So if you want to vilify the fossil fuel industry, please go ahead if that's how you think we make change in this society. But I don't think that's the way we want to do it. We would want to do it in this case. We mentioned Prop 87. I'm not going to go back and try and do a revisionist history of Prop 87. I will say we would have argued as a company that we would much prefer not to spend any of the money we spend in opposing what we thought was a very poorly crafted initiative. All due respect to Anthony. I would have much preferred, and we actually made an effort to try and ask the authors if they were willing to look and work with us on how we might be investing some of those dollars that we ended up spending on a political campaign in the research and development of renewables or a more sustainable model. We couldn't get to that dialogue because we were at odds with one another. So the first thing I would do is I would look to ways to build forums, opportunities, engagement, technical conferences, things that would allow these different contributing sectors, whether it's the environmental community, whether it's technologists, whether it's futurists, whether it's people that want to be investors in green technology, the capitalists, and come together more consistently and start to chart a more strategic path to a sustainable energy future that doesn't simply discount the value of what you have currently and how you're going to continue to bring it along because whether we want to like it or not, in our lifetime, certainly in my lifetime and more, liquid transportation fuels as we know them, be it jet fuel or diesel or any of the other products we use, are going to be very much a stable part of our energy mix. But as we grow and build in these new opportunities, the sustainable portion of that will steadily grow and perhaps be the dominant part of that mix. So I would much prefer to build a framework that encouraged collaboration, allowed us then to see where there were opportunities for mutual investment, and that's where I would start the process. And right now it tends to be, in my opinion, we continue to want to argue against one another. And I just don't see that as, at the end of the day, being constructive. Because we're going to bring money to the table. People are going to bring talent and ideas and approaches to the table. How you marry those up is how you make progress.
So, Anthony, can we all get along?
You know, I've been getting along just fine. You know, it's not a question of being. Listen, the liquid fuel infrastructure is the only infrastructure there is for mass transportation. And until and unless another viable infrastructure develops, which, you know, there's every 5 years we go through, you know, the next big thing. Right now the next big thing is electricity. It seems to make sense to me now, but then ethanol made sense to me 5 years ago. And so until and unless there's something that's workable and better, we have what we have. And all we can do is try and be as efficient and as stringent as we can in terms of using our energy the best way we can, and essentially forcing ourselves, not just the oil companies, but ourselves, to burn that energy as cleanly as we can. And that's often where the conflict is. The emitters, whether it's the oil companies or the cement companies or the power plants, you know, when you regulate an emitter, it causes them to have to spend money to mitigate those emissions. And those costs, to a greater or lesser extent, depending on the industry and the economics and the elasticity of price and all of this economic stuff, to a greater or lesser extent, those costs get passed through to consumers. And so, to the extent that we want to regulate the oil companies and their refinery technology, then we get into an adversarial thing because they don't want to be regulated and people want them to be regulated. And so it's not, I will say, we can all get along in that if I were in their shoes, I would probably behave very similarly in terms of trying to protect my own interests. I'm not in their shoes. And so, there's times when we've been adversaries. At the end of the day, if you make the next miracle biofuel, the guys you're going to want to sell it to are Chevron, because they're the ones who are going to be able to sell it to the public. And they're the ones who are willing to buy it, too. Chevron is not, whereas there are some other oil companies that are out there actively opposing and actively trying to interfere with innovation and market adaptation in this area, Chevron's not one of them.
Rod has his keys to his cars right here in case things get really tough.
This is my Prius.
It looks as if it's going to be okay, Rod.
Actually, I got a guy that's keeping the engine warm. Just
Yeah, well, actually, we all be in my house.
Well, Josh, I want to turn to you for a second on the same theme. We're really looking for major changes in behavior. That's what sort of Anthony was asking. I'm not sure that's the strategy I would use, but anyhow, we're looking for changes in behavior. One of your film really is to help people conceive of that change in behavior. But I often thought, and I'd ask for your opinion, that if we had the tailpipes coming out of the front of the car, so you breathe the combustion that you were producing yourselves, you get more change faster. But tell me about the role of how to change behavior.
I think we need to take a broader perspective in that I think both of what Rod and Anthony contribute is, these perspectives are so important for us. First of all, there's only two ways to move energy in our society. You can move it through a wire or you can move it through a pipe. But other than that, you're stuck. So if it's not going through electrical transmission lines, it's not going through traditional piping, tankage, storage, trucks, the tanker ships that bring it, you're talking about a theoretical technology. And why I'm saying this is we have a vested $10 trillion in current liquid fuels infrastructure, and perhaps twice or three times that much invested in electrical infrastructure. So a lot of the new technologies, a lot of the theoretical ideas that people have are very valid and they're very powerful. But you have to go, okay, do you have $10 trillion? Because if you don't, you're not going to rebuild a liquid fuels infrastructure to pipe hydrogen around the country. First, you have to deal with the infrastructure we have. It would bankrupt the United States to try and rebuild it. We can't. We have what we have. So based on that infrastructure, we look at what are the common interests? What are the common goals that we need to accomplish? And they're very simple. It's carbon reduction, sustainability, and health issues. There are really only three issues. And so I think what we find that's missing in California and in the US on a national basis is agreement on standards and agreement on a pathway. We tend to go, well, this is bad, this is good. Well, we're always coming at it from a right now standpoint, and that's something Anthony said, what's good right now? What's good right now may not be good in 5 or 10 years. So there has to be not just agreement in those three areas, but agreement on a pathway. What is the ladder towards sustainability? Chevron can be a sustainable company just as much as any wind or solar company can be a sustainable company. But it takes agreement on standards. I'll give you an example. We have something in the United States called renewable diesel. We have something else called biodiesel. The difference is they both come from fats and oils. So you eat a hamburger, you get French fries on the side. Those French fries are cooked and use cooking oil. That cooking oil can be turned into fuel. There are two different pathways.